Good evening. I'm Tom Graham. I'm a senior fellow at the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs, and I want to welcome you to our roundtable discussion on challenges and security in the Eastern Mediterranean. In many ways, this region is a microcosm containing all the problems we face worldwide: terrorism and refugees, failing states and civil wars, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and from time to time their use. Energy discoveries in the Eastern Mediterranean may nurture cooperation or fuel conflict. And since Russia's deployment of its forces in Syria just a little over a year ago, we see burgeoning competition between it and the United States for the first time in this region since probably the middle of the 1970s. Nothing suggests that the turmoil in this region is going to end anytime soon. What we may be certain is that when it does end, this region is going to look different. It's going to look different, at least on the surface, if not in its essence. And here, to help us understand what the challenges are, what's going on today, what we may be facing in the future, are three very distinguished individuals. They're all permanent representatives to the United Nations, representing their country at the Security Council and the General Assembly and elsewhere. Starting at the far right is Ambassador Boura from Greece. Next to her is sitting Ambassador Emiliou from Cyprus. We're going to skip one and go to the third permanent representative, which is Ambassador Nawaf Salam from Lebanon. So please join me in welcoming to our panel today. Now, the moderator for this evening's discussion is Ambassador Yuriy Sergeyev, who also happens to have been a permanent representative to the United Nations until the end of last year, if I remember correctly, representing Ukraine. So these are all colleagues getting together to tell us what's happening in the world today. Yuriy is now a senior fellow in the European Union Studies program at Yale. He's had a long and distinguished ambassadorial career, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him. He's going to give us an idea of how we're going to conduct the conversation this evening. So, Ambassador Sergeyev.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for hosting us today. And I would like to continue your greetings to those who stand behind this round table, Professor David Cameron, who baptized this series of the round tables around the global governance theme. The next, by the way, will be on the November 15, and the final on the November 30th, again with the colleagues and ambassadors. So, as Tom Graham already said, we have today a great opportunity to discuss a large scope of the problems on risks to peace and security in the big region which embraces three continents: European, Asian, and African, and embraces as well all the challenges of these continents. The advantage is that our today's panelists, as Professor Graham said, are great personalities, outstanding diplomats, and brilliant scholars. All of them are doctors. Doctors in international relations, doctors in the law, international law. So this is the case when we can get from first hands their vision on the developments in a very, very tough and challenging region of the East Mediterranean. I will give the floor in the United Nations way, the country's alphabetic order. So it means we'll start with Cyprus. It's a great privilege for me to welcome Ambassador Emiliou to start today's discussion. His career is well described in the papers he got. He is both scholar, he is both politician, and what is very emblematic, and you could understand what respect he has as diplomat in the United Nations as being nominated as a candidate for the president of the General Assembly. So he's outstanding personality. And his country today is challenged in finding a way how to reunite the divided nation into communities. Today, Cyprus has a very tough consultations and discussions, and we hope that by the end of this week we will have positive results. At least what is important to remind you that during the September political discussion in this General Assembly, the President of Cyprus proudly stated that Cyprus is a model as a security provider. Well, so a big hope to reunite the country. Very big hope despite the challenges. Well, I give you floor, the ambassador. So please introduce your vision of the challenges, the risks in the region, in your country. How it works? Take mine.
Thank you, Yuriy. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. Wonder if you can see Cyprus in the map. Cyprus is one of those countries where geography is destiny. We are bang in the middle of 3 continents. Africa to the south, the Egyptian coast is 250 miles from us. Asia to the east, Syria is only about 90 miles east of Cyprus. Turkey, 40 miles to the north, and the island of Rhodes about 400 miles. And I say geography is destiny because Cyprus was always under the influence and most times under the occupation of the big powers of each era, starting as far back as the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, Alexander the Great, the Romans, Byzantines, Venice, Genoans, Ottomans, finally the British. So between the ancient kingdoms of Cyprus, which were independent Cypriot freedoms, and the establishment of the Republic of Cyprus in 1960, Cyprus was for 2,500 years under the dominance of the power of the day. Cyprus has been divided since 1974, when Turkey invaded and occupied the northern third of the country. However, despite the traumatic experience of the division, following the division of the island, Cyprus is one of the beacons of stability in the region, in the sense that along it's the only member state of the European Union since 2004 there, a beacon of democracy and economic stability. But the problem of the occupation and division is a destabilizing factor. If I move just to the north, Turkey, which is one of the 2 biggest countries in the region, there, and it's a key player in Cyprus, and I'll explain why, we have a very challenging situation. Turkey is going through a turbulent period. There was, as you know, an attempted coup d'etat last July, which has led to extensive upheaval in Turkish politics. Turkey faces the problem with the Kurds in her southeastern province, which Turkish authorities traditionally have dealt with as an existential problem for the country. The Kurdish problem extends in Syria, where we have a civil war and the Kurds are fighting in the north of the country, and they have established a geographical basis there, and also in northern Iraq. The Kurdish problem is one of the preeminent problems of our region, going back to the settlement following the First World War, when the Kurdish population was divided between four different countries: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. And ever since, it has gone through different phases. Just to the east of Cyprus is Syria. You all know what's going on there. There we have had a civil war for the 5.5 years, which has ended up as a proxy war between various powers, which I will not name for obvious reasons, given my position in the region. And given the failure of the Security Council to take decisive action, we cannot see an end to that tragedy. This has also led to a human tragedy, the mass exodus of millions of refugees, which indirectly has led to a political crisis even in countries as far as the north of Europe, given the substantial numbers of refugees that have found their way into Europe. This has also affected other countries in the region, and I'm sure Ambassador Salam will explain the challenges faced by Lebanon by virtue of the hundreds of thousands of refugees that Lebanon has had to play host to, which of course threaten the stability of a country which has been facing her own challenges over the years. The same goes, of course, for Jordan, which is another major recipient of Syrian refugees, a country which also has been going through a difficult history and has its own delicate balances. Of course, we have Israel there and the Palestinian territories, and this has been at the root of many of the problems and challenges that we face in our region, given the conflict that has been going on since the late 40s with the establishment of the State of Israel and the start of the Middle East issue in the form that we know it, going through various phases. And finally, I will stop with Egypt, and I refer to Egypt because Egypt has been traditionally a pivotal country in the region. It has been one of the leadership countries of the Arab world. Egypt was one of the countries that experienced the so-called Arab Spring, went through a very difficult period with an Islamic government, with army intervention and the establishment of a new regime which is exerting efforts to stabilize the situation. But the outcome is still uncertain. It is a country that faces significant social and economic and security challenges. And of course, to add to this puzzle, as if we didn't have enough ingredients and complications, another element that will be a decisive factor in the developments in the region is the discovery in the last 10 years of significant hydrocarbon resources in the areas around my country, Cyprus. And for the time being, what has been announced, but I'm sure there are other, there is resources falling within the exclusive economic zone of Israel to the southeast of the Mediterranean basin. There was a very large deposit which was announced a few months back just to the north of Egypt. And this is complemented by also other deposits to the southeast corner of Cyprus. Of course, given the difficult political mix, the way that these resources will be exploited and will be one of the significant factors in the sense that in the best case scenario, they could be a factor of creating peace and stability following the example set by the founding members of the European Union, the European communities at the time, following the end of the Second World War, which used coal as the first grain in the establishment of the European community and the progress of European integration. But on the other hand, given the political differences and the challenges that we face, they might add an extra irritant in the already strained relations between most countries. I will close this brief presentation by just taking a brief stock of unfinished business. I believe that a key to restoring stability in the region is to first find a way out of the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Because unless this is resolved somehow, this will be a constant irritant between the Arab states and Israel. And this will have a wider repercussion. Of course, we need a solution in Syria, and this nobody knows how it's going to end. We need also stabilization both in Egypt and Turkey, the two big countries of our region. The situation is in flux in both countries, and we need to see the beginning of a settlement of the unfinished business of the First World War, and I'm talking about the Kurdish issue with which I have started. And I will leave you with this thought. Don't forget that most of the states that you have seen, especially to the east of Cyprus, are artificial units which were created as a part of the settlement of the First World War, which was intended, the peace agreement, to be the peace that ended all wars, but unfortunately it failed tragically, and we are still a century later feeling the consequences in that most sensitive region of the world. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion ahead.
Thank you, Nicholas. I agree that geography is a destiny, but geopolitics is a chance, and this is what I would like then to discuss during the question-answer session, well, with your help to discover what geopolitical tactics and strategies could be implemented in the region to settle all the problems you have correctly accented upon. And now it's my great honor, privilege, and pleasure to introduce Ambassador Katerina Boura. I have two reasons for this pleasure, because Ambassador is an outstanding leader in the United Nations diplomatic community. This is the first reason. And the second, because I'm in love in Greece, where I was ambassador 20 years ago. And I have a chance to visit the country since 2000, when I relinquished my post, every summer, well, to go around, to meet friends, to come back whenever I served, including the United Nations, and to share the truth about what's going on. So, and I was really surprised how Greece, being in crisis itself, managed to settle and to adopt a large number of migrants from everywhere. So, and what I noticed as well, that despite to some European Union countries, I have never saw the hostile xenophobia. Well, it's very emblematic. So, Ambassador, you have the floor, and we are waiting you to share with us your vision and the challenges, risks for your country and for the region.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the Macmillan Center of International and Area Studies of Yale University, and of course Ambassador Yuriy Sergeyev for organizing this panel about the East Mediterranean, the risks and challenges for the security in the East Mediterranean. And I would like to thank all of you for being here this evening to discuss developments truly dramatic and historic in our region. I always like to start, when I talk about the East Mediterranean, I always like to remind people that this area that is known also as the Middle East and the Levant is an area of origins of civilizations and religions, of cultural exchange, an area of trade, where empires rose and cosmopolitan cities thrived in dynamic diversity. Today, sadly, it is notably an insecure region. And of course, it's part of a greater whole of the Mediterranean. It's just a part of the Mediterranean. Sometimes we cannot totally differentiate the East Mediterranean from the rest of the Mediterranean. The world focused on the Mediterranean in the latest years as a consequence of the Arab revolutions known as the Arab Spring that began in Tunisia and have left Libya and Syria in chaos. There, protracted conflicts and state failure brought regional antagonisms at the forefront, increased sectarian tensions in the region, and provided fertile ground for spillover of terrorism and political violence. The emergence of a terrorist group known as ISIS or ISIL or Daesh has been a dangerous blow to Arab security, order, and brought a new dimension to the conflicts in the region. Massacres and unspeakable atrocities were effected against increasingly desperate populations. Syria has been the most notorious example, and still is the theater of such brutality. As a result, waves of displaced persons and refugees were desperate to reach the relative prosperity of Europe. The scale of this mobility rendered the Mediterranean region in the grips of a human security crisis unprecedented since World War II. The burden of addressing the crisis has fallen mainly on the governments and societies of Southern Europe and Southeast Mediterranean countries such as Lebanon and countries such as Jordan and Turkey, with negative consequences for the social cohesion and political stability of the countries. Trafficking of people, drugs, arms and money add to the list of the security concerns. Terrorist attacks and ongoing counter-terrorist operation in European capitals and cities underscore the nature of the threat. However, those are not the only issues, the only concerns coming from the East Mediterranean. There are a number of issues that have been part of the Mediterranean security environment for some time. The unresolved, for example, Palestinian question is a key example. The impasse of the Middle East peace process will likely remain a source of security concern in the Mediterranean for some time to come. If one adds, as Ambassador Emiliou said, to the list the unresolved Cyprus issue and the potential for conflict over new energy resources, one can understand why the Southeast Mediterranean is central to the strategic debates of Europe, but also in Washington. As developments affect directly or indirectly the security of other societies, the problems of the region are no longer peripheral. Their weight for global security is substantial, especially at a time of growing tension and great power competition. In conditions of utter chaos and regional antagonisms, the old order in the Middle East is threatened and borders seem unstable. What is my country, Greece, doing in these circumstances? Because Greece is in the middle of this area. It is in an area that we consider a continuum that includes not only the East Mediterranean, but also the Balkans and the wider region that surrounds the East Mediterranean. We are convinced that the contemporary challenges in the East Mediterranean can only be addressed with dialogue and cooperation based on a vision for the region. So in this context, Greece has taken a number of initiatives aiming at addressing regional issues, reviving cooperation as the cornerstone of development and stability. We consider that we are located within a triangle of instability that is defined by Ukraine in the north, Libya to the southwest, and Syria, Iraq to the southeast. And so, together with Cyprus, Greece has put together a number of trilateral cooperation schemes, starting with Israel and Egypt, and then also with cooperation schemes with Jordan and Lebanon, with the aim of creating a network of stability. These trilateral cooperation schemes involve strictly 3 countries each time, and they have a positive agenda and extended to all policy sectors. And similar cooperation schemes are expected with more countries, and several such schemes are explored in order to enhance this net of stability and security in the region. As we said, the East Mediterranean, the Middle East, our region, used to be a center of an area of cultural and religious diversity. And we believe that it is very important to maintain this nature, this character of the Middle East, because this is a guarantee for security, for stability, and for peace in the future. So with the need to protect all cultural and religious communities that have for centuries coexisted as an integral part of the reality in the region, Foreign Minister of Greece has convened last October, in October 2015, an international conference on religious and cultural pluralism and peaceful coexistence in the Middle East. More than 200 participants went to this conference, religious leaders, foreign ministers, NGOs, and other actors. And one of the results was to establish an observatory for these matters in view of the next conference that will be convened in Athens again in 2017. But we also believe that the region should not be seen solely through the lens of problems and conflicts, but through its prospects and dynamics. And so in this context, our foreign minister convened last September in Rhodes a conference for security and stability in the East Mediterranean with the participation of 18 countries from Southern Europe and Arab countries. The goal was to address the needs of the region in a scheme that will link Southeast Europe with the East Mediterranean into one group. Two regions that are in the center of this instability, but of vital importance for international peace and stability. And the aim is, of course, to discuss positive prospects and cooperation, synergies and activities between the countries of the region, and to establish networks and prospects of common interest. So what can be done and how can we see the future of this region at the international level? What we have as a fact is that the countries of the Southeast Mediterranean are undergoing a profound crisis. Developments are fast, and the impact is unpredictable. As we are talking, there is an operation going on for the liberation of Mosul, and at the same time, the city of Aleppo has become the emblematic case of the horrific depths of the Syrian tragedy has reached. But after 5 years of war, we have certainly learned some lessons. And those are perhaps the conclusions that we can have from and try to see the future through. One of the conclusions is that recourse to a concept of military might cannot be helpful in order to cope with unpredictable situations in the Southeast Mediterranean. Political solutions have to be found. Change of borders can also upset the already delicate balance in the Middle East with unpredictable consequences for the whole region. We don't know, however, how this war is going to end. But peace, one day, sooner or later, will come. And we have to work so that it will not only be simply a solution, but a sustainable peace. Sustainable peace, or a second conclusion, is that sustainable peace in the region will require a compromise agreement between all the regional actors and stakeholders. A regional accord or accords that will support the state structures, that will support the states, but states that will also guarantee respect of citizens' rights, of religious freedom, and that will promote national accord and inclusiveness, that will defeat terrorism and end chaos. In this context, a sustainable peace arrangement will also require an agreement on a set of principles of non-interference and intervention, as well as conflict prevention mechanisms. Needless to say that resolving pending issues will also be absolutely essential. In the protracted conflicts that ensued the Arab Spring, very little attention was paid to an important aspect of the Arab revolts, that at the heart of these revolts, of the Arab Spring, lay the fundamental need for decent work and dignified life, of hope for a better future for the people who revolted in the Arab countries. Peace and security in the region will therefore require, above all, economic development, will require decent work and dignified life, jobs for the hundreds of thousands of unemployed youth. Development will require investment that will address the needs of the local economies and that will promote stability. To this end, regional cooperation will indeed be critical. Reconstruction and development will heal the consequences of war and create better prospects for the people of the region, will end destruction and will allow local populations to return home and to build a new future in their countries. But finally, I think that we have to underline that contemporary challenges often involve non-state actors and have increasingly regional consequences of political, security, and humanitarian nature that cannot be addressed by states alone. Concerted action from all concerned world and regional powers is absolutely necessary. Enhancing a multilateral approach and regional cooperation will inevitably have to guide our approach in dealing with regional peace and security challenges. The UN constitutes the right platform to bring states together and to coordinate the use of tools we already have, such as the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, for an appropriate international response to key threats. As President Obama emphasized in his UN speech, if we are to meet the challenges of this century, we are going to have to do more to build up international capacity. This will uncertainly be a challenge that the new Secretary General of the United Nations, will have to face. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katerina, for your comprehensive observation. It's true that the problems of Eastern Mediterranean are no longer peripheral. Eastern Mediterranean geopolitics has become central in security terms on both sides of Atlantics. And now I have a privilege and honor to introduce our third speaker. I don't know if we have in the United Nations someone who has such a huge experience in all the spheres of law, constitutional, electoral, international, whatever, so the big list. So, Ambassador Nawaf Salam, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Yuriy. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you all for showing up this afternoon. I think it's easy to challenge whether there is such a thing as a Eastern Mediterranean political region or cultural region, and this is a legitimate challenge. I don't think that the East Mediterranean constitute a system or a sub-system, but yet let's, from a very pragmatic point of view, agree today that no region in the world faces today more violence, and no region in the world faces as difficult challenges as this part of the world, with the ongoing civil war in Syria, the threat of dismemberment of Iraq, the chaos in Libya, the unending Arab-Israeli conflict, the dangers looming over Lebanon. But we are not only witnessing bloody civil wars in this part of the world and accelerated processes of disintegration in many states, mainly Arab states, but also the success of radical Islamist groups in seizing for the first time since Afghanistan vast territories and imposing their tyrannical rule there. I mean, let alone the proclamation of one of these groups of the so-called Islamic State in total disregard to the international borders, territorial integrity, and sovereignty of these states. And of course, I'd like to stress the overwhelming will of the majority of the inhabitants of these lands. So, I mean, this leaves us with a number of questions. First, I mean, many commentators, maybe because that was the centennial of the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916 last year, I mean, then, are we going to see the end of the state system in the region, the end of Syria, the end of Iraq, the end of Lebanon, as we have known these countries since 1920 or 2021. Let me say, I mean, one here, and then, I mean, I leave it for the discussion. My proposition is that the survival of most of these states within their recognized borders, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, has never been more contingent on the need to substantially reconsider their, what I call their internal borders. That is the borders between the different groups constituting these entities. In other words, the maintenance of the territorial integrity of these states has, as never before, increasingly become dependent of achieving a more inclusive and equitable redistribution of power. Now, as to the Islamist extremists and their violent terrorist methods, we need, I think, first to stress that though very powerful, they remain a marginal minority among Muslims. The rise of these movements, such as Daesh, I would say, is more the expression of a radical, communitarian, Sunni, in that case, phenomenon, than of any religious fervor as such. It's, in fact, these movements feed upon a number of diverse, complex, and interrelated social, economic, and political factors, more than on ideology, and let me stress, more than on any religious ideology. Mainly, I'd like to underline three factors here. One is the sense of frustration and deprivation which is generated at the national level by long years of living under oppressive regimes and situations of repression and poverty. Not to mention that these situations are also often aggravated by a feeling of exclusion where sectarian policies prevail. Two, there is the sense of humiliation and dispossession at the regional level now, which is largely produced by the enduring tragedy of the Palestinian people and the unending Arab-Israeli conflict. Three, there is the sense of an increased alienation and marginalization in a globalized world which is perceived as more and more dominated by Western models and cultures. Now, of course, one needs to understand, I mean, these feelings and the grievances. Some may say that, this would lead to legitimizing them. I would argue to the contrary. I think this is necessary in order not to fight the Islamist extremists, but the conditions that create Islamic extremism. I mean, one can bomb Daesh and you kill terrorists, but this does not eradicate terrorism. You don't eradicate terrorism by killing more terrorists. Rather, you have to address the root causes leading to terrorism. Now, I mean, this region is not only facing the terrorist threats, but another very important challenge, that of refugees. I'll give you the example of my country, Lebanon, which is a small country of about 4.5 million people, now host of more than 1.2 million Syrian refugees, over and above some 400,000 Palestinian refugees that have been there since 1947. In total, that's 1/3 plus of the residents of Lebanon, with all the pressure, whether political, economic, social, they put on the system. Let me give you one simple example. Over 50% of this refugee population are children. They need education. And now in our public schools, we have established a 3-shift system. One in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one at night to accommodate the refugees. Let alone the pressure that, I mean, on the electricity, need, power, and so on, and so forth. So, now, how can one address the refugee challenge, whether in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Turkey? My answer would be the same as, I mean, the one for addressing the challenges posed by the rise of terrorism. You have to address the root causes leading to whether terrorism or the mass movement of refugees. How can one do so? By addressing mainly the conflicts in the region. I mean, the Arab, or the centrality of the Arab-Israeli conflict has been mentioned by my two colleagues. Maybe it's somehow overshadowed today by the civil war and the bloodshed in Syria and in Iraq. But, I mean, the symbolism of the Arab-Israeli conflict, because of its religious dimension, because of what Jerusalem means to the world, because it's the oldest conflict. I mean, its highly symbolic nature is a very disrupting element, and I mean, the fact that it's an unending conflict remains a source of frustration on both sides. I mean, let alone the sense of injustice and humiliation, I mean, felt by the Arab side. Now, of course, there is a need to address this conflict. Now, how to address it? Let me very briefly address this issue. We often, I mean, parties have been to be brought around the table, and they should talk. They should start talking. We want to help. But in reality, parties have been talking for over 25 years now, since the Oslo agreements. Before the famous Oslo agreement, one could say, the problem is that the Arabs and the Israelis don't talk. the Palestinians and the Israelis don't talk. We have to bring them around the same table, and they should talk. But they have been only talking. Maybe personally, I think it's a bad thing. I mean, to put them around the same table and tell them to talk, because they repeat the same narrative, and everyone will become more entrenched in his position. It's the easiest simulation exercise. If I mean, I don't know who Thomas. If, I mean, he in any exam or paper, etc. Everyone will get an A+ on a paper, in a simulation exercise, or on a paper. What would the Arabs say? What would the Israelis say? What the Palestinians say? What the I mean, it's no. So worst thing, what has been missing, I think, is how to bridge the gap between these two parties. The role of a third party, but not only a third party convening them to talk, a third party capable of intervening as a mediator, putting ideas, options on the table to bridge the gap between these parties. And I think, I mean, there is no one better placed and equipped than the US to do this role. But again, I think if this role is left to the US by themselves, nothing will be done. I think nothing can be done without the US, but if it's left to the US by itself or by themselves, I don't know which one is more correct, I mean, nothing will be done. Hence, the importance of a European catalyst, because they are closer to the region, they know better the region, they have direct interest in the region. I'll take 2 more minutes, because I mean the Arab-Israeli conflict is no longer, I mean, the conflict, I mean, informing all others as it used to be 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. I have already alluded to the fact that in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, mainly what is needed is a more inclusive policies. I mean, a new power sharing formula. But to close with where we started on the East Mediterranean conflict. But here, what one has to keep in mind, that these conflicts, mainly these 3, I mean, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, are to a great extent informed by 2 non-Mediterranean actors, Iran and Saudi Arabia. But let me warn you, here people tend, I mean, to reduce this conflict. Oh, this is Shias versus Sunni. Of course, I mean, it has a Shia versus Sunni dimension, but it's not Shias versus Sunni. It is Shias versus Sunni, plus, I mean, there is also a quote-unquote national dimension to it, Arabs versus Persians. Is it Arab versus Persians and Shia versus Sunnis? No. There is also a geostrategic dimension. I may say geostrategic because of the roots of oil and oil itself. So, I mean, it's a much more complex conflict than just to be reduced of one of its elements. And finally, and I have taken 15 minutes like each of my colleagues, I mean, beyond these 2 regional, non-Mediterranean actors, I think that it's very difficult now to address these conflicts without, I mean, keeping the broader image, in fact, that of the now, how should we call it, active or non-active? No, it's not the right word, but the U.S.-Russian or the, as Thomas was suggesting, I mean, the Russian involvement or active involvement in the region. So again, I mean, I close by from where I started. Maybe what characterizes this part of the world is the violence and challenges that we don't see elsewhere. But it seems that there is no solution to the problems of this region only, I mean, by the actors of the region. Thank you, Yuriy.
Thank you, Nawaf. So now we are coming back to the most important part of our roundtable, questions, answers. I know that Ambassador Salam should leave us in 30 minutes. That's why I'm going to exploit him totally. And your knowledge is important. Well, let's build the discussion in that way. Three of our panelists, they mentioned in their statements the same issues. Let's come back to these issues. Most probably some of them more highlighted, but I think that the audience has additional questions. We will start with the simplest one. You touched upon the Israeli-Palestinian.
Okay, it's a very simple one, true. I'll tell you why. It's a very simple one. I mean, when we sat for 2 years on the council, I used to have that same line, saying, I'm sorry, I mean, to my 14 colleagues, I mean, there is no need for a Columbus here, no need for an Edison, no need for a Marconi. There is no will to reinvent in the Arab-Israeli conflict. The end game is known. Name it. On whether refugees, the settlements, Jerusalem, there is more than one workable, practical solution. What has been missing is two things. One, putting all these elements together in a package, because only a package deal approach can do the job today. This business of step by step, etc. We have tried it. I mean, for a long time. It can no longer work. You need a package deal approach where each party could see at the end. I mean, what it will gain. Some will lose on one, but will gain on another. So this is why you need this packaging, and you need commitment. And in order to get the parties there, I mean, you can take them to the river, but to make the horse drink, I mean, you will need that missing committed mediator.
Is
Well,
good image to make the horse drink. Well, like that.
You have to force them to drink.
Well,
I mean,
or
to starve them so they will drink.
It's a good. It's a good point. Do you think that this year general debates in the United Nations were helpful, particularly in terms of the President Obama address to both sides, pressing them to recognize legitimacy of both of them? Do you think that initiative of France to have by the end of the year a conference has any real outcomes? What do you think?
No, me.
We are in a transitional period in the sense that in 2 weeks from today exactly we will have a new elected president of the United States, and this by necessity changes the situation. We have also a new regime coming in the United Nations, a new Secretary General elect. And also going to the actors in the region, I'm afraid that both Israeli politics internally are moving far to the right, and the people in power have their own views as to what the end game should be, the Palestinian issue. So slowly but steadily they are moving away from the agreed parameters accepted by all of them. But on the other hand, what has to be said is that the current Palestinian leadership is not the strongest has been. So quite frankly and diplomatically, I don't think that they are in a position to take decisions which will be necessary to take in order to reach a compromise. So despite external interventions which are positive, like the French initiative, I do not think that for the time being in the region there are leaderships that have the political will, the political strength, the political legitimacy to make the necessary compromises in order to get there. Plus, of course, the fact that the important external actors, especially the United States, are going through a transitional period between two administrations.
Thank you. To address him, I understand he's an expert, yeah? Or you want to continue?
No, I would agree that in order to have a solution in these pending issues in particular, we need the parties to agree before in order to make all these interesting initiatives successful. But of course, it is also important that in order to get there, in order to make the parties agree, we have to create incentives that would bring them because of the interests that will lead them to wanting to have a solution. And this is why Greece wants to, has initiated a policy of initiatives of cooperation in the region, because we believe that this will create common interests and incentives to bring the countries closer and bridge the gaps so that solutions and resolutions of conflicts will be facilitated.
Thank you. Now, could you clarify one problem, very confusing problem? So, Nicholas mentioned a lack of the leadership in the Palestinian state. Do you think that they need more cooperation between Gaza and Ramallah, because it looks like that Ramallah supports, for example, the current Syrian government,
Okay.
and Gaza supports the opposition.
Yeah, with all due respect, to my colleague, I'm sure you have heard of this chicken and egg dilemma.
Yeah.
When you have a strong, he is too strong. Why should he compromise? He does not need to compromise. And then, you have a weak leadership. He's too weak. How could he compromise? He lacks legitimacy, etc. So, you don't know how to deal with strong leaders. We are told, won't make compromises because they don't feel the need for it. And weak ones because they don't have the legitimacy. I think, we have to think beyond strong. And of course, this Palestinian leadership is a weak leadership. And of course, Netanyahu is too strong today. This is why, we cannot just wait for it. We have to do something about it. And I think, can add an important element, that of incentives. Part of the incentives is this package, the all-win package, where everyone could see what he will be getting out of the end game. This is why I think it's a high time to go to an end game. Only when, you put this end game solution before the parties, then you could affect, I think, the necessary changes in both Israel and Palestine. Of course, you need change in Israel and Palestine to get to the solution. And I think by putting this end game on the table, associated with, of course, an incentive, because itself it's an incentive, but it needs to be also shared with other incentives. Then I mean, they Israel would have to think, there's the possibility of having peace with 22 Arab states, and what? The Islamic conference that 56 states also will endorse this, that this would mean 56 Islamic embassies in Jerusalem. Come on, we have to think of it. I mean, this is something serious, and this is a real gain there. And on the Palestinian, that I mean, this will allow for the return of refugees. Return of the refugees. Yeah, okay. I mean, return. I mean, not to homeland. Maybe I mean to their very homes in Haifa, Jaffa, etc. But to their home. They'll no longer be stateless. They'll be carrying a Palestinian passport, recognized one, getting visas on it. I mean, they'll have a real state. I mean, not a paper state or a UN state, even if it has a flag now, it's a paper state. I mean, we can argue endlessly, and I think rightly, I mean, so from an international law point of view, that it's a state, but an occupied state, and then, I mean, it remains, I mean, this is a talk that this will be turned into something concrete. Then I think it will become possible.
Good, thank you, thank you. Most probably you have questions on Palestine-Israel conflict?
I thought it's an easy one.
Yeah, please. Name yourself and short questions, short answers, and we will move to the next simple question on Syria.
Hello, my name is Robert Proner. I'm a professor. I'm a student in. I'm an undergraduate taking a class with Ambassador Sergeyev. First, thank you so much for coming to the Macmillan Center today. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to listen to all of you and your perspectives on this, so thank you for coming. Regarding the concept of a package deal, which can be easily presented as an end goal, as a shining light on the horizon for the Israelis and the Palestinians, how would you reconcile that with the fact that the situation is constantly evolving, and that even if you make a package deal of, Israel gets Jerusalem, Palestine gets Haifa, and one side gets an airport and the other side gets the Jordan River and whatever, how do you account for the fact that even if both sides agree to those terms, the situation might still evolve to a certain point in which those terms are no longer applicable, in the sense that sometimes it's impossible to say, and then one side will get Jerusalem and it'll be perfectly fine, and then afterwards there might be a subset of the population which is not happy with that.
Okay.
You know.
I mean, well, I mean, there won't be one side getting Jerusalem, or one side getting the West Bank, or one side getting. Each side will be getting something of each of these elements, whether in Jerusalem as the capital of two states, or refugees being able to return, but not to their very homes, or maybe some of them in a sort of family reunion program on, 10, 50 years, whatever, or I mean, even on the territorial issue of the West Bank. I think not all settlements, are going to could be removed, but I mean, there need to be some land swaps. But if you don't fix these in a package, then one could say that things will keep changing and evolving. You need to fix them. You need to implement that package, and you need also to guarantee the package. It won't be enough, I mean, to say, okay, that's the package, it's for you parties to implement it. No, they'll have to implement also with the support of the international community. For example, with a massive presence of some sort of international force in the West Bank, with economic incentives and so on and so forth. So it's doable. So that it won't continue moving, shifting, changing. You have to fix it, package, implement it, and also guarantee it.
Yes. Please, you have a floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Hanan Al-Badawi. I'm a pre-doctoral fellow at the program on refugees and forced displacement at Macmillan. Actually, I want to link what you've said about the Arab-Israeli peace process. I'd like to link what you have just mentioned about the negotiation process between Israelis and Palestinians to the what you have mentioned about the regional system and how the East Mediterranean does not constitute a regional system, and how the lack of leadership at the regional level, at the Arab system level, is actually affecting the stalemate at the level of the negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, because there has always been this umbrella that sponsors pushing negotiations forward. Right now, do you think this umbrella is actually helping? Do you think that Israelis actually have reasons to go forward and negotiate with Palestinians with regard to the current fragmentation of the regional system and the fact that many key players in the system would actually not necessarily link the relationship with Israel to advancement of the negotiations?
Actually, you will always have spoilers. Whether, on the Palestinian or the Israeli or in the broader region. But the stakes for the main, players, the gains, should become tangible gains, real ones, worth acceptable, for the majority of Israelis and the Palestinian in the sort of package I was trying to, or the idea of package that I was trying to explain. That could, there's no guarantee or anything, but would make it maybe possible and withstand the spoilers. I don't see really another formula. The spoilers will be there, but you need something to not balance out, but that could make the majority of Israelis and Palestinians prevail over the spoilers, whether domestic or regional.
Thank you. Nawaf, I know that you are leaving us in 3 minutes. Short question, very easy. Okay. How realistic is the emergence of the independent Kurdish state? 3 minutes.
No, I think, of course, there is a resurgence of Kurdish, the Kurdish nationalism has always been there. It's not, one cannot speak of a resurgence of Kurdish nationalism today. It has always been there. Kurdish state, involving, the Kurds in Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, I don't see that really realistic today. But definitely, I think what one can see is that there'll be no solution, I mean, to the Syrian crisis without greater autonomy to the Kurds in Syria. Recognition, for example, let's start, I mean, with their language. I mean, that they have a different language, that they could have their schools, that their culture be acknowledged. In Iraq, most probably, I mean, this is speculation, but most probably will be have to move towards a more federal, if not confederal, system, taking into account Turkish national or nationalistic aspiration. Situation is much more difficult in Turkey and in Iran.
Thank you, Nawaf. So you may stay or then to leave discreetly. So you have still 2 minutes. You mentioned Kurds as well. You most probably have your comments.
I would agree with my colleague from Lebanon. Personally, I don't see the possibility of an independent Kurdish state in the foreseeable future. What is at stake here, it's a federated state in Iraq, which realistically the only recipe for future stability in Iraq is the centralized government along federal lines, and there I think Kurdish federated state will become a reality. Of course, the future in Syria is unforeseen, but again, there, given that the Kurds already control strips of land and they have fought actively, they should enjoy a degree of autonomy following a political solution. And of course, Turkey, the best the Kurdish population can hope for is recognition of their different identity and recognition of a series of rights in order to foster this identity. But I cannot see Turkey going any further than that, even that will be doubtful. And I think those who live in Iran, given the nature of the regime there, are the ones that will have to wait the longest until something happens, positive happens to them.
Okay. Dorina, if you want to add.
Yes, there isn't much to add. I will just agree that this is the region is a complex puzzle that makes it difficult, but at the same time necessary to adopt new approaches for the security in the context of regional and international cooperation. Every discussion about we know that the part of the conflict of the region is not a conflict of frontiers. This is a conflict of regional antagonisms, and perhaps a change of frontiers would even deteriorate this conflict. However, there are many other solutions that can be found in the context of states, and in the most important thing is to keep the checks and balances and create entities that will be inclusive, that will guarantee respect of the rights of different groups, religions, communities, and that will have equal rights for all, and will be able to guarantee the stability of the region. If we think in terms of stability and peace, Well, a change of frontiers is not to be discussed, but there are many other solutions and many other ways. And as we said, we have to be, we have to adapt new approaches that can be adapted in the state context.
Okay, I'm really sorry, but I have to be at 7. And I mean, thank you for all.
Thank you. Well, let's move ahead. All of you mentioned in your statements at the beginning, and then you continue, you mentioned your big neighbor, Turkey. Your countries had different relations with Turkey during the history until recently, but what I recognize being ambassador and then later, that because of the Greek-Turkish detente of the relations, the amelioration of relations brought the serious stability in the Aegean Sea region, which is more stable than other regions in the Eastern Mediterranean. Then we observed good dynamics in the Cyprus internal dialogue, and even last year we expected to have some finalization of that. My question is, the recent developments, political developments in Turkey, this coup d'etat and so on, could have any negative impact on the Aegean Mediterranean stability in Greek-Turkish relations, or could it bring any problems in the internal dialogues which is going on in Cyprus? Provocative? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Greece, attributes great importance to its relations with Turkey. Turkey is also a country of strategic importance in the region, and it is a country that we believe that contributes or can contribute in a very positive way to the stability of the region. In this context, we have a lot of good exchanges with the country, and we also support its European orientation in its accession to becoming part of Europe, of course, on the basis of certain criteria that have to be fulfilled. About the recent coup, you know that Greece is one of the countries that has suffered from a military regime a few decades ago, and so we understand that it is very difficult for a country to undergo these problems that Turkey faced in the summer. Perhaps we did not, we have not fully grasped the trauma, the problem that Turkey has been through in this coup that threatened its democratic society. But what is important is that Turkey will remain in the way of democratic society. Will remain a democratic society. Will heal the problems and the wounds of this problem of the summer in a democratic way with respect to human rights, and will respect the stability and the rules for stability in the region. We already have problems with the Turkish presence in Syria and in Iraq. We hope that this is going to be a presence that will contribute to pacifying the region and fighting terrorism. And we also hope, we also expect very much that Turkey will cooperate and will contribute to a solution in Cyprus that, as far as Greece is concerned, will see it without, Cyprus without guarantees and without army from Turkey or from any other country.
Right. Inshallah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'll try to give you a wider picture. If you take Turkey, and its neighbors. To the south, Turkey occupies a third of my country for the last 42 years. To the north, they have borders with Russia, and I'm sure you all know the tensions there, especially following the incident with the Russian jet about a year ago. To the south in Syria, Turkey is a part of the problem, not a part of the solution. In Iraq, again, there are Turkish troops, and for those who have been following newspapers in the last few days, you will see how the Iraqi government feels about that, and that's not very positively. With Iran, there are tensions there in opposing camps on Syria, and both of these countries are part of the proxy war in Syria. With Armenia, there are no diplomatic relations. So it is a country with problems with all of its neighbors, without a single exception. And of course, there is the internal tension with 16 million Turks feeling not very comfortable, to put it mildly, in the current structure of the Turkish state. Plus the fact of, that it seems that the first preeminent priority of the current Turkish president is to change the regime and turn it into a presidential system. So a lot of effort and energy is devoted to that goal. Therefore, it is a very difficult puzzle. Following the coup d'etat, we have a new reality. About 80,000 people have been either arrested or relieved of their duties. There is a very big exercise of purification, or so the authorities say, from the Gulenist elements. And of course, this has caused additional complications within the system. I'm just giving you certain elements of this situation. I don't have the solution. We have had some statements coming out from the very top of the Turkish leadership, which give cause for concern, to say the least. So I think we'll have to be patient to see which way things will go in Turkey. With regards to Cyprus, the solution of the problem are in Ankara, because only Ankara can decide to withdraw the Turkish troops, occupation troops, from the northern part of my country, which for us is a sine qua non for a solution. Ankara will have to give up its guarantor role, the way that Greece has already agreed to, the United Kingdom. For us, it is inconceivable for our country to be the subject of guarantees. Situation in 2016 is not the same as it was in 1960, when the system of guarantees was established, especially a system offering each of the guarantors the possibility of unilateral military intervention. these issues are expected to be discussed in the next few weeks, even before the end of the year. And there, of course, we will see Turkey's hand, so to speak. So far, Turkey have, beyond general declarations of good intent to be helpful to a solution, they have not come up with anything more concrete than that. But the time is approaching rapidly, and I think we will have our answers in the next few weeks.
Thank you indeed. The next question is that both your countries, Greece more, and Lebanon as well, but now left will answer on his behalf. Well, we witnessed the adoption of the decision in the United Nations General Assembly on migration. European Union had its serious meeting also on that issue. Well, if all these decisions, they are only decisions, or they would be the solutions for the problems you are facing? Sorry.
Well, this it does not apply only to the issue of migration, but to all the decisions that are taken by the United Nations. Of course, we have,
Agree.
if we believe that there is a multilateral system that to which we abide and which we respect, we also have to try to apply and implement its decisions. So it is very important that the United Nations have taken these decisions, and we all have to see how we are going to implement what has been decided. We in Greece, we don't have as many refugees as Lebanon. Lebanon has 1/4 of the population as refugees, but Greece has also more than they can support at that time, particularly at a time of crisis. And you know that the financial crisis in Europe is very much responsible for the inability and the limited way that the European states can provide for refugees. However, for Greece, this policy of stability and cooperation is also at the heart, at the core of countries handling the refugee crisis. This, regardless how intense the problem is for the country. So we will abide by what has been suggested what has been agreed at by the United Nations. We act within the context of international law that provides about the refugees. And we believe that this problem is not a national problem, is not a local problem, but is an international problem, and all the countries should take their responsibilities and contribute to addressing it and solving it, because there is the short-term issue, how to address the issue as it appears, as it comes to the countries, and there is a long-term policy that has to be applied in order to foresee and to prevent the issue getting worse, and this is by stopping conflicts and by enhancing development in the different countries, so that we will limit migration. Also, climate change will play an important role in migration in the future. We have to agree to implement all the decisions of the United Nations in order to have a long-term, to implement a long-term policy to address this issue of migration and refugees.
You want to add?
Obviously, I agree with what Catherine has said. I would just underline, so far as the Eastern Mediterranean, the area that is the subject of our discussion tonight, is concerned, the role of the European Union in dealing with the problem of refugees and migration is pivotal. Unfortunately, we have not, talking part of the of European Union, done all we could in order to deal effectively with the problem. It is a very serious problem, not just for the region, but the European societies as a whole, and it is a serious factor of internal politics in each European country. But this was one of the reasons that have prevented us collectively to be as effective as we should have been. And of course, the Union can do more in showing solidarity with member states like Greece, Malta, Italy, which have seen at the brunt of the refugee problem.
Thank you. May I collect short questions from the audience? Please.
The specter of Iranian terror is reflected in Hezbollah, is reflected in the Houthi, in the Aden, and is reflected also in Assad. What comprehensive plan can be developed to rein in the possibility of Iranian terror, dismantling that entire area and bringing in the nuclear weaponry?
Mm-hmm. Do we have answer?
Well, Iran is one of the pivotal states in the region. It is a big actor, and obviously one should, at this stage at least, exclude the thought of any military option, and this realization was, I think, at the center of the current US administration in deciding to reach a deal with Iran, which has been a very positive development. Of course, the important thing, having reached this agreement, is implementation. This approach is also the approach shared by the European Union. The only way to deal with Iran is to engage with Iran positively. It's not an easy task. They are very tough negotiators. They are extremely shrewd. And also, it is a very complex political structure with various centers of power within the structure of the country, which of course makes it even more complex dealing effectively with them. But I cannot see personally any other way of coming to terms with Iran, but positive engagement with them.
I can add something to that. Well, to cope, to fight against the terrorism globally, first what the nations should do in the United Nations to finalize the discussions on the determination of what terrorism is. It's ridiculous, but today in the Sixth Committee, it's Legal Committee, I presided 5 years ago, still there is no consensus on what is terrorism. That's why some of the names you mentioned, well, they're not so easy to prove that Hamas or Hezbollah are terroristic organizations in terms of 7 countries' perception, because they are part of the governing system. They are involved in the education system, and not only in that region, but broader. So the nations should finalize the definition what terrorism is. Not to have, the ambiguities in including Syria. Russia and United States in the Security Council, they can't agree what part of the opposition is terrorist, what is not. So this is because of that. Any questions? We have a few minutes, please.
The United States mission and groups from New York sponsored an exhibit of children, Syrian children, and where they were sleeping. And one looked at the exhibit and thought, what about ordinary people trying to live ordinary lives in extraordinary circumstances who have no voice in the negotiations or even some of the terms that mean whether or not their children can go to school in a refugee camp? There has been some efforts to involve, as you know, the Security Council Resolution 1325, women in the discussion as well as men, who could turn attention to the quality of the lives of the people as opposed to the quality of the politics. And I am curious if you could think of any ways to begin to look at, solutions that would build regionalism, that would build colleges, that would take into account the ordinary needs of people who flee in ways that were done here in the early 20th century as options of things that could be done, but are not being done by the states thinking only in terms of the politics and economics.
Okay, thank you. Do we have answers?
Yes, well, as we said before, we are all trying to find, new solutions for the problems. In fact, today there was a discussion at the Security Council about women, peace and security, and this is taking place every year around that time. It is underlining always the need of including more women in the decision process and in all the processes that have to do with peace. But it is true that we have a lot to do still in order to take decisions that will include all parts of the population and will see for the ordinary people and their lives. There is still a lot to be done, and unfortunately, the people, the first that are suffering in a war, are the people that are the children and the women and the elderly people and the ordinary people that otherwise need to live a quiet life. But I would, if I may, I would come to the previous question and to what has been said from Nicholas. I would like to add that for the region, in order to address this perhaps inequality or sometimes the breaking of equilibrium between the different countries, it is important to put an end to the sectarian conflict. That's why it is important to have a compromise agreement between the regional actors, all the actors and stakeholders, an accord that will maintain a balance of power in the region and will avoid phenomena in the future of countries interfering into other countries' affairs.
Thank you.
Undermining stability.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of this discussion. It could be, until open-ended discussion. So the question is a good one because this is what is being debated on a daily basis in the United Nations. How to make the existing instruments to work more efficiently, because there are instruments within UNICEF, there are instruments within UNFPA, these people funds, the instruments within United Nations development programs. A long discussion since, long ago. There is, for example, an organization, UNRWA, which should care about the refugees, Palestinian refugees. So, and the problem is so politicized in the United Nations, and instead of working to fundraise and to organize the better better adaptation of the people and the children, as you mentioned, to have access to the education. So all these issues are being seriously politicized, and it is all this going on the level of the well, ping pong between two or more countries. Finalizing, so thank you very much for taking part in this round table. It is true that in our globalized world, with its interdependencies, interconnectedness, global and regional peace and security are indivisible. You are right, Katerina, saying that we can't cut one sub-region from the whole region of Mediterranean. I remember the year 2003 when your delegation in UNESCO brought a good idea, Olive Road for Peace, and it would be good to bring it to United Nations, because this is something which uniting all the region. Well, we wish great success to Cyprus in your internal dialogue for a reunification of the country. Well, all the best to Greece. We'll come next year back. Thank you all for your attendance and your support.